Mercedes had one of the worst starts of the season, if not the worst, as recognized by both Wolff and Hamilton. Even though the team is looking forward to the next race in Jeddah, one that's supposed to help them be competitive and score some decent results. The general outcome of the season is very unlikely to change, and the struggles will continue for the entire season. Things have gotten to the point where Mercedes is potentially giving up on the W14 and prioritizing a team that's actually buying engines from them and using their wind tunnels, no matter how bizarre this sounds. So, can we see Aston Martin battling Red Bull for the championship? Will this be something that Mercedes agrees to, given the poor start of the season? And what does Red Bull have to say about this? Not many people thought that Aston Martin would beat Mercedes on the first race of the season. But that is the reality of how things currently stand, and we are just witnessing it from a neutral point of view. It seems like Mercedes understood what went wrong, but unfortunately, it cannot be fixed right away or with an easy fix, so they decided to abandon the current design of the W14 and go with a brand new one. The team plans to go with a more similar design to Red Bull and Ferrari, and for the first time ever, the Brackley-based squad accepted the fact that they were wrong, and everyone else was right, so the innovative no-pod side-pod design needs to go down in history. It also took Hamilton's public statement about the team not listening to him when they should have for them to go down this road. But it's so early in the season, and if there is one thing we know about Mercedes, it's that they aren't giving up so easily and throwing in the towel after just one race on the calendar. Mercedes is bringing new upgrades to Jeddah for the upcoming race weekend, ones that are supposed to suit the W14 more because of the low downforce requirement and the nature of the surface. Earlier in Bahrain, Mercedes wasn't able to find a good pace due to the medium and high downforce corners, but this won't be the case in Jeddah, as more of the corners are caught at full throttle. Therefore, the small upgrades brought to the W14 are meant to increase the competitiveness of the car, which seems to provide even more issues and challenges to the Brackley-based squad compared to the W13. But even with this in mind, it's evident that Aston Martin got the better end of the battle with Mercedes, and it wasn't even close when it came to race pace. One thing that these two teams differ massively on is the design of the car, with Aston Martin using the RB18 as the prototype for the 2023 Challenger. But this time, everything is legal because the team managed to poach Dan Fallows and around 100 engineers from Red Bull last year. With that in mind, there is a wild theory that has been rumored in the paddock, and it involves Mercedes giving up on the W14 design and pushing Aston Martin to challenge Red Bull even further. Even though the championship is such a distant goal for Mercedes, one team that could capitalize on what's currently going in Mercedes is the team that actually gave them a lesson in improving in the off-season, Aston Martin. This is a team that uses most of the mechanical parts from Mercedes, including the engine, and if they're able to gather more top equipment from Mercedes and boost their performance even further, then rest assured that Alonso and Stroll will be frequent drivers on the podium. Yes, Mercedes will definitely bring the new concept to their cars, but they will face some massive issues like the financial restrictions of the budget cap and the development rate of the new design. They'll likely lose 1.5 years compared to Ferrari and Red Bull because they didn't want to give up on the design that they believed would bring Hamilton the 8th record-breaking championship. Even though the theory of Mercedes prioritizing Aston Martin with top equipment just because the Silverstone-based team got the better end of the design and the performance that comes with it sounds silly, it's not far from being achieved. It seems like Mercedes set the Australian GP as the deadline to see improvement in Wolff's team. And if this doesn't seem to come out as a reality, then Mercedes will prioritize the customer team at Aston Martin with engine development. One guy that doesn't believe in this whole narrative turning out to be the truth is Helmut Marko, as the senior advisor for Red Bull couldn't do anything but laugh it off. When talking about this matter, he added, "Why should Mercedes make a competitor stronger? That makes no sense." Despite all cooperation, at the end of the day, Aston Martin is a competitor for Mercedes in the passenger car sector. Mercedes will now do everything to make the disappointing start to the season forgotten. With this ambitious task, there is certainly no room to help Aston Martin. Franz Tost has also spoken about this matter, saying that the rumors are nonsense because the regulations clearly stipulate that engine manufacturers must receive the same material. Furthermore, the experienced team principal added that this is meticulously adhered to by everyone, so favoring a team is therefore forbidden and unrealistic. But another thing that we need to pay attention to is Alonso's statement, as the two-time world champion said that his team is currently racing with the basic version of the car, and the AMR23 will experience a lot of upgrades as the season passes by. We've seen that in the first half of the season last year, Red Bull wasn't very competitive. More precisely, Ferrari was able to keep up the pace, but with upgrades after upgrades, the Austrian team never looked back. While Aston Martin is far from being proclaimed the best team on the grid, with them having to beat Red Bull, the team that their design draws inspiration from, it's easy to see them fighting for the championship with crippled teams like Ferrari and Mercedes. The Silver Arrows abandoned their concept very early in the season, after just one race, and at this point, it's very uncertain whether they have what it takes to return to podium finishes and strong race pace. Ferrari, on the other hand, struggled a lot with downforce generation and with tire degradation, something that saw Sainz lose a lot of time to Alonso and be stripped of the podium finish in Bahrain. Although they have the fastest engine, there aren't many tracks on the calendar that would prioritize the straight-line speed of the SF23, as the downforce engineering miracle of the AMR23 will definitely prove to be a challenge to be overcome in the following races. Therefore, while this seems like a bit of nonsense to all, Wolff's statement that his team has a lot to learn from Aston Martin and can take a thing or two from their design solutions isn't that far-fetched of a scenario. It's not common that the supplier learns tips and tricks from the customer team, but in this sport, anything can become reality. So with that in mind, can we really see Aston Martin being better than Mercedes throughout the entire course of the season? The short answer is yes, we can. What happened in Bahrain wasn't luck, except for Leclerc's reliability issues, and Aston Martin genuinely outperformed Mercedes, even though they qualified nearly the same on Saturday. And even though Mercedes has yet to prove to the world that the newly designed car will be a tough nut to crack, Aston Martin already has one in their garage, and the fact that it's using the Mercedes engine only goes to show that Mercedes has been put in a position that no other team would want to be in right now. With that in mind, it's very interesting to see how Mercedes will react to these rumors. And one thing that they definitely need to work on amid all of these rumor talks is the contract with Hamilton. Even though the 7-time world champion has been known as a loyal individual and one that will definitely propel the team in the right direction, there comes a time where you need to look after yourself. And one thing that Hamilton is probably looking for is the record-breaking 8th championship, one that Mercedes may not really be in the position to give right now. And now that Aston Martin has proven to be a very competitive team, it goes without saying that Mercedes and Hamilton will have some interesting talks when it comes to renewing the contract. After all, Hamilton's motivation may be stripped down to zero after the first race of the season, and the 7-time world champion is likely growing tired of being the support of the team for the second consecutive season. All in all, a very interesting period lies ahead of us, one in which Mercedes will have a lot of foes to fight, and they are all placing all of their bets on the new design of the car and the return of James Allison. With all that, what are your thoughts on Mercedes sharing their superior parts with Aston Martin? Do you think that this is going to see the light of day? Let us know in the comments below.